The app's just guessing what you need. And let me tell you, your own intuition about your body and what your body needs is going to always be better than whatever an app seems to think. Welcome to the Biking Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Smith, and I lost 50 pounds riding my bike by focusing on what my body can do. Now, I teach other women how to do the same. I am obsessed with completely flipping the script on weight loss so that we can work out to feel good and feel strong. If you are ready to stop dieting, learn how to appreciate your body, and have fun riding your bike, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited to jump into another episode of the Biking Wellness Podcast. And if you're joining us for the very first time, a very special welcome to you. Welcome to the Biking Wellness community. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with intro stuff today just because I can't wait to get to the meat of this episode. But I do want to say really quickly that I have a completely free lose weight biking quick start guide. And you can get it just by going to www.sassy.com/guide. That's www.sasscy.com/guide. And it'll be delivered right to your inbox and you can get started on your biking weight loss today. And I can tell you that there will be no suggestion in there anywhere that you should count calories. And that's the focus of today's episode. I want to talk to you about why we all need to stop counting calories for good. Now, the reason why I'm so focused on this idea today is because I've been seeing a lot of information out there about being in a calorie deficit, about calories in, calories out, and how it's just simple math. And all you have to do is follow the math and plug everything into a app, and then you're going to be all set and you're going to lose weight and everything is going to be freaking great. Well, if you are anything like me, that just does not work. It has never worked. And if it does work for you and it does work long term, then you are probably not even listening to this podcast. Because women like me, we like food. We think it is great. We think it's delicious. And we never have enough calories in the day. And this is why when I set out to lose my weight for the last time, I knew that calorie counting was not going to be a part of it. I cannot tell you how many times I see women who are counting calories, carbs, macros, all the things, and they're just so discouraged. They're saying, oh my gosh, I'm doing everything right, and yet I'm still not losing weight. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my body? And invariably, people will chime in and they'll say, oh, well, how long have you been doing it for? It takes time. And then, an expert will chime in and say, these are all of the things you need to be doing. These are the numbers of grams of protein you should be getting, and all of this kind of really complicated information. And I always read this and I think, oh my gosh, I have lost my weight. I've learned how to keep it off. I'm really confident about it. And when I read this, I get overwhelmed. I can't even imagine how a woman who has been, doing everything quote unquote right and is seeking advice and is just being told you're not doing it good enough, or you're not working hard enough, or you're not really tracking everything close enough. Because this was me. This was what I had done for years. I tried Weight Watchers. I tried MyFitnessPal. I tried my food diary. I tried Spark People. I tried Richard Simmons Deal-A-Meal cards. I tried all of the calorie counting diets. And I thought, I know that restricting the type of food is never going to work for me. So all I can really do is restrict calories and restrict how much I'm eating. I'm not here to argue the idea that if you want to lose weight, in some and many circumstances, you have to eat less. That really is 100% the case. But the problem is the method in which we have been encouraged by diet culture to do this. And that is by tracking. That is by plugging everything into an app, writing down every single thing that you eat. And that is so overwhelming to someone when they are first starting out and when they want to lose weight. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm tired. It's the end of the day. I like food. I'm really stressed out. I've been using food as a way to feel good and as a way to comfort myself, well, pretty much forever. And now instead of, reading my historical fiction at the end of the day or watching TV on the couch with my family, I'm sitting here on my phone trying to remember everything I ate and plug it all in and see if I ate too much and what I should do tomorrow. And oh my gosh, my brain just would want to explode. And I would think, all right, well, in the past when you've done this, Stacey, it's worked out for you and you've been able to lose weight. And yeah, well, of course, sometimes I did lose weight. Sometimes I lost a good amount of weight. But what invariably would happen is I would get sick of it. I would get tired. Life would get in the way. And I would stop tracking. I would stop putting things into an app. Or I would get to a point where, yes, I did lose some weight, but then it stalled and I wasn't seeing the progress anymore. So I didn't see the point anymore. Now, if any of this is sounding a little bit familiar to you, you, my friend, are 100% in the right place, because I'm going to talk to you about why we need to stop doing this and what we should do instead. So the first thing that I want to talk about is this idea that calorie counting is not fun. It's just not fun, especially when the novelty runs out or when the novelty wears off. It may be fun for a short period of time, when it's all new and you're putting things in and you're seeing some results. That can be really, really fun. But when the novelty of it starts to wear off, you start to realize, wow, I really don't want to be doing this for the rest of my life. And also, the other end of that is that you could actually become overly obsessed with food and thinking about food way too much. And that is both potentially exhausting and harmful as well. And then finally, the other piece of this is that when you are counting calories based on what an app says that you should be eating, you sometimes are going to be really, really hungry. And that isn't a great situation either. So let's dive into this one a little bit more. When you're constantly tracking and you're constantly thinking about food, then you can feel really bad and really guilty if you go over your calories. And you also can feel like you need to eat a whole bunch of extra food in order to meet your calorie goal at the end of the day if you didn't particularly eat a lot that day because you either didn't have time or you weren't hungry. Basically, what it's doing is it's encouraging you just to do what the app says instead of thinking about what your body actually needs. And it is not fun. It's work. And most of us can only do this work for so long before life gets in the way and we give up and we find ourselves actually gaining back all of the weight we lost and then some. At least that has always been my experience. Additionally, it involves math. I always tell my students, hello, I am not a math teacher for a reason. I am a social studies girl. I like to think about literature and books and history, and math is not my thing. And I find that even if the app is doing the math for me, I end up getting so focused on the numbers that I'm not thinking about how I feel. I'm just thinking, oh, this app is going to take over and is going to tell me what I'm supposed to eat. And come hell or high water, I'm just going to do exactly what it says. And that's just not necessarily going to make you feel good. It's not going to give you the energy or the fuel that you need. And if you're anything like me, it's just not sustainable. No one wants to log stuff into an app forever. And if you're just plugging things in and not really thinking about them, instead of making decisions about what does and does not feel good in your body, then you're not going to have any idea what to do when you want to stop using an app because you haven't been thinking about really much of anything. You've been letting the app do all of the work for you. And if you're done and sick of the app, then you haven't been really actually paying attention to how that food in your body feels. The next thing I want to talk about related to this point about calorie counting not being particularly fun is that it doesn't actually address our emotional eating. It doesn't address the fact that a lot of us eat because we are stressed. We eat because we are eating for pleasure, because it tastes good, because we're bored, because we are upset, because we are just eating our emotions sometimes, even when we don't even realize we're eating our emotions. And if you have an app that is telling you what to eat and you run out of calories for that day, and you are in the habit of eating your emotions and emotionally eating like I had been for decades, then you're not left with anything to deal with those emotions. When you're not learning how to actually feel the things that your body really wants to feel, and you've been comforting yourself with food and you take the food away, that is the epitome of not fun. And you're not actually learning habits that will help you handle and deal with those emotions. So that's why one of the big problems with calorie counting is that it's just not fun. And you can find yourself just constantly thinking about food and obsessing over food. It isn't healthy. And sometimes you end up really hungry and you don't have any means by which to deal with those emotions. So that is a really big problem and one of the big reasons why I am not a fan of encouraging people in my program or encouraging my clients to count calories. That's problem number one. Now, here's problem number two. Calorie counting takes a one-size-fits-all approach to fueling and to weight loss. And the problem with that is that not all calories are actually created equal, and not all people and bodies are the same. We all metabolize calories, nutrition, etc. differently. Depending on our body type and depending on whether or not we're male or female, we aren't going to necessarily be processing calories and fuel in the same way. So as a result of this, having a calorie number or a target number, either for one person versus another or a male versus a female, it's always going to be different. And I know that most modern apps do take some of this into account, but also, and does give you some suggestions, with macros. And if you're not sure what macros are, this is the idea of eating different types of nutrients, like making sure you're getting enough protein and making sure you're not eating too many carbs is what they will sometimes suggest. But you all know how I feel about carbs. I think they're delicious and they fuel your body. So the idea here, again, is that this is really complicated. And when you really kind of think about, oh my gosh, my body's different. And it's different from someone who is of the opposite sex. It's different from even someone who is around my age and the same weight. They could have a completely different body composition and metabolize food totally differently. I am sure you have had those friends who you think can, or those family members who seem like they can eat whatever the heck they want and they never gain an ounce. And it's because our bodies are different. Yes, there are people whose bodies metabolize nutrients and calories and food quicker than others. There are so many factors that can come into play. And if your head's spinning right now, because I know that for years and years and years, mine was spinning about this sort of thing, it was so refreshing for me to realize, oh, wait, I just need to test and find out what works for me. I just need to take this approach where I'm going to try eating until I am satisfied, stopping when I've had enough dealing with my emotions, and I am never going to count calories again. And that's when everything changed for me because it became reasonable, it became doable, and it became something that could actually work for me. Another thing that I really need to mention related to calories is that different foods are going to fuel your body differently. And on those days when you are active and you're riding and you're being more active, you're going to probably need more fuel on those days in the lead up to your ride. And if you're anything like me, you're not going to be very hungry after you ride. I am rarely, if ever, hungry after a really long ride. I don't know why. It's just my body is just so, I think maybe in some way it's so focused on the movement and what it did that it's just not quite ready for a lot of heavy food yet, or a lot of food or anything like that. So for me, sometimes, the all size fits all approach to you get this number of calories a day, and I guess if you were active, you get more, is that sometimes I'm super hungry the day after a really hard effort as opposed to the day of. So that's just something that I have noticed for me. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to mention related to this one size fits all approach is that as we age, our body needs different things. For example, women have a tendency to need more protein as we get older. We need it because we're losing muscle mass. We need it to help build that muscle mass back up. We need it in order to hold on to our bone density because we tend to lose bone density as we age. And protein can really help with that. We need more protein than we might have needed previously. So again, the one size fits all approach just doesn't work as we start to get older. The next problem that I want to talk to you about, which I'm getting kind of closer to, is this idea of it disconnecting you from your body, from your hunger cues, and it really kind of focusing on those numbers in the app telling you how much you can and or can't eat. When we start to follow a plan of working in a calorie deficit and calories in and calories out and plugging all of our food into an app, we stop listening to our hunger cues and we stop listening to our fullness cues. And we start giving all of that power and control either to someone outside of our body or to an app. And it took me pretty much forever to realize that this just was never going to work for me. Someone else's plan for what I should be eating was never going to work. Not just because there are a lot of things that I don't like to eat that other people like to eat. Like, I will never eat cottage cheese. It's just probably not the first time I've been on a cottage cheese rant, but please, please, please do not tell me to eat cottage cheese if I want to lose weight. I think it is disgusting. But anyway, the idea here is that you kind of aren't the person that's in control of your own weight loss, your own destiny, your own body, your own fueling anymore. And when you start to realize, oh, like I did, I need more calories usually the day after a long ride than the day of that long ride, then I used to feel really guilty. I used to be really confused. I used to think, what's wrong with me that I want to eat so much today? I'm not doing anything today. It's a rest day. And it took me a while to figure out, oh, well, you're really hungry today because you went all out yesterday. And now your body needs fuel. It needs to replenish all of the stores that it lost. And then I started to feel better about it. I was like, oh, then why am I feeling so guilty about the fact that my body just needs more food today? Because I realized it wasn't emotional hunger. It wasn't that I needed the comfort of food. It's not that there was anything wrong. It was just like, no, I was actually hungry. And that's something that calorie counting and an app and working in a calorie deficit doesn't really provide for you. It doesn't get you to think about, oh, are you really hungry? If so, why? Get curious about it. What's happening? What's going on in your body? I know that it used to be when I was doing, some of these calorie counting types of programs or apps and that sort of thing, a lot of times there would be a community component, which I think is freaking amazing and fantastic and should happen in all situations. But a lot of times women in the community would say, oh, I don't eat my exercise calories, or I don't eat my exercise points. And if you really want to lose weight, you can't do that. And I was thinking, but we need more fuel if we're moving. That's just common sense. And I know intrinsically if my effort needs more fuel or not. I know that if I am doing a 2-hour bike ride, I need a whole heck of a lot more fuel than if I'm going for a 10-minute walk after dinner. A 10-minute walk after dinner for me does not need any more fuel, but a 2-hour bike ride absolutely does need more fuel. So yes, those apps will say, oh, how long was your activity? What was the intensity? And so on and so forth. But the app's just guessing what you need. And let me tell you, your own intuition about your body and what your body needs is going to always be better than whatever an app seems to think. The last thing that I wanted to talk about related to calorie counting is that it just tends to not work long term if you're women like us, because we like food, because we get emotional, because we emotionally eat, because life happens, because it's not sustainable, because we are busy and we are tired, and you can only white knuckle through hunger for so long before you get to a place where you're like, oh my gosh, just give me all of the things that are in the pantry right now. Screw it. I don't care. I am going to eat because that's what I want to do, either because we are physically hungry or we are emotionally hungry. And calorie counting, calorie deficit, this app, that app, whoever's telling you what to do does not account for that long. It just doesn't work long term because we like food and we get tired and we have what feels like the weight of the world on our shoulders sometimes. What tends to happen is that there have been many women who have come to me and who have said, listen, I'm doing all the things. I am tracking everything. I'm eating in a calorie deficit. I'm still not losing weight. And what will happen is a couple of things. One is they may not have been doing that for very long. And it may be, I've been doing it for 2 or 3 weeks and the scale's not budging. And it could simply be that it hasn't been a long enough time. But here's the thing, is that if you are feeling this desperate, it's not ever going to work because you are not going to be of the mindset where, oh yeah, I'm just going to keep doing this and it's going to be great. No, you're done. You've had it. You've done it for 2, 3, 4 weeks. You've done all of the things and the scale's not moving. You're not going to keep doing it. That just isn't sustainable. And that just isn't going to work long term. And the problem is not you. It is not your lack of willpower. It's not your inability to stick with something. It's not because you aren't strict enough with yourself. It's because you are a human. And if you are putting what feels like Herculean effort into something and you're not seeing any results, you're just going to stop because it doesn't feel like it's worth it. And that's not you. You're not the problem. It is whatever you're doing. That's the problem. It's just too much and it's just not right for you. And it's just not sustainable. What will often happen is when we restrict like that, we'll end up binging, we'll end up overeating, we'll end up saying screw it, because when you think you're doing all the things and you think you're doing everything right and nothing seems to work, you feel like you messed up. You feel like you are the problem and you are the failure. And really the problem and the failure is that you've been given bad advice. It's not your fault. It's not the fact that you're not good enough, that you aren't doing it good enough, that you don't have the willpower to restrict forever. It's that the things that you've been told to do are just simply not the right things for you. And it's so, so wonderful to know that, to feel that, to realize, oh, I'm not the problem. Okay? So those are the reasons why I get so, so passionate about calorie counting. And I think you can probably just even sense how worked up I am right now because I have had so many women come to me over the years that I have been coaching and saying, what am I doing wrong? I feel like I've done all the right things. What am I doing wrong? And usually the only thing that they're doing wrong is beating themselves up for all of this nonsense not working because it's not their fault. And if you're sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, calorie counting has never worked for me, it's not your fault. It just doesn't work long term for the vast majority of people. It doesn't. And when it does work long term and they do lose their weight and they do keep it off, if it's because they're in that kind of mindset of restriction and that they have to do this and they have to white knuckle through this and they have to use all of their willpower, if that is the situation and the reality, then I promise you that they're still not happy. And really, that's what we want. We want to be happy. We want to feel good. We want to look in the mirror and be happy. And if you've been restricting and beating yourself up through the whole process of losing weight, once you get to that magical number in your head, it still isn't going to feel good. So what do? Well, we do some pretty straightforward things, actually. We pay attention to whether or not we're hungry. We pay attention to the idea of, have I had enough food to sustain me? We choose foods that feel good in our bodies, that fuel us, that works. We ask ourselves, what's working? What isn't? How do these foods feel in my body? Like, for example, I've noticed very recently, the past few menstrual cycles, that I get really, really bloated right at the start of my period. And so I can't have seltzer or like really gassy vegetables or anything like that at the start of my period anymore. It doesn't feel good in my body. And it took me a little bit of time to figure that out. But now that I figured it out, I know that I can avoid those foods because right now those foods don't feel good in my body at that time of the month. Our bodies are constantly changing and we're constantly learning what works and what feels good, what kinds of foods fuel our body, make us energized for a bike ride, and what kind of foods don't. So when we, instead of calorie counting, focus on building eating habits that actually sustain us and make us feel good, and foods that feel good in our body, and reflect on, what's working, what's not working, constantly checking in with ourselves to see how we feel, that is when we start to see the results that we want long term. So if you've ever been wondering why, for years eating in a calorie deficit or restricting calories or counting calories has not worked for you long term, and you're sick of being told that this is the way to lose weight, I really hope that this episode makes you feel better. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't pay attention to what you eat. Absolutely, you should, 100%. But there's no one-size-fits-all approach to this. We all have to figure out for ourselves what feels good. We all have to figure out for ourselves, like, oh, that's actually a little bit too much food. That doesn't feel good in my body. That is overeating. And when we figure those things out, that's when we start building the habits that will make us sustain our weight loss long term. It's not that everything you've ever been taught is wrong, because there are a lot of things that the fitness industry, the diet industry talks about that are actually really good, like eating vegetables and fruits and good food that isn't processed. That is all great advice. Drinking lots of water is great advice. But we all need to learn more about testing and finding out what kind of food works in our body, what feels good, what doesn't, and also, where to work in the foods that we are really just eating for pleasure. And learning how to eat those foods in a way that doesn't make us feel like, oh my gosh, I can't have this because I can't control myself around it. So when we start learning those habits, that's when we start to see the long-term sustainable results. Calorie counting doesn't do that. It just makes us feel like we aren't good enough and we're messing it up and we're doing it wrong because we aren't getting the results that we want long term. And we think that we're the problem, when in fact, it's just the method that we're using and we just simply need to try something else. Okay? Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Biking Wellness Podcast. I really hope that it helped you. If you've ever been in a situation where calorie counting was just too much, too exhausting, too restrictive, not working, I really, really hope that this episode lets you put calorie counting to rest for good. Let's bury it. Let's put it away forever. Let's not come back to it. Let's not revisit it. And please, if you have a friend who's out there who this message will resonate with, she doesn't need to ride bikes. You just know that she's always thinking about, oh my gosh, this is too much. And oh my gosh, how many calories is this? And oh, can I look at the label on the package? If you know that there's somebody out there who desperately needs this message, please, please, please share it with her. She will be so grateful to you. And I am grateful to you as well, because if I can just help one woman, just one, not count calories ever, ever, ever again, I feel like my life will be 100% complete. I hope you have an amazing day. I hope you have an incredible week. And I can't wait to be with you again next week. Talk soon. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Biking Wellness Podcast. Be sure to head on over to sassy.com/guide, SASCY.com/guide, to get my completely free Lose Weight Biking Quick Start Guide so that you can get started with simple, doable weight loss today. That's SASCY.com/guide.